Hi, everyone out there on Planet Virus. My name is Jay Bennett. I'm with Revolver magazine, and we are here with Alex Winter and William Sadler from Bill and Ted Face the Music. Alex, of course, plays Bill S. Preston Esquire, and William Sadler is Death, if you can imagine that, Death. So we're having a conversation with Bill and Death. All right, so guys, thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Of course. Yes, of course. There's so much gravitas, Bill and Death.
Sure.
I feel
Great to be here.
I know, right? Yeah. I mean, Bill and Death. It doesn't get much better than that.
It sounds heavy.
It does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so look, I mean, obviously it's been a long time, almost 30 years since the last Bill and Ted movie. How does it feel to be inhabiting these characters, these roles, after all this time?
Well, I mean, we had, for us, we had a lot of time to figure it out while we were trying to get the film made, because it took a long time to get made, to get financed. You know, we've been telling Bill along the way, you know, you're coming back, right?
I know. Like for years.
Yeah. Yeah, it took time.
No, it did. It was a long birthing process. It was really fun once the trigger got pulled and we all ended up back in the costumes and back on a set. That didn't feel strange at all. I was really surprised at how my character, apparently I've been carrying him around in my hip pocket for decades and decades, and I let him out to play, and he just like took off, you know. That wasn't difficult at all.
Yeah, I agree. You know, for Keanu and myself, we were acting opposite a few people that we had worked with in the previous two films, Hal Landon Jr. and Amy Stock. But the scene with Death is a big centerpiece of the film in terms of the plot and the emotional arc, and it was really fun to do. It was an emotional reunion for the characters. You know, it's how I felt about it. It wasn't even just like the actors having a reunion. It was like Bill and Ted meeting up with Death again after all the water under the bridge. There was it was a surprising amount of emotion there.
I agree. And it was also, it was a wonderful parallel because, you know, it was also Alex and Keanu and Bill, you know, setting foot on stage again together for the very first time. I had not, I mean, I'd seen you I think the night before at some party, John Goodman's house, and but I hadn't seen Keanu. So life was imitating art, or art was imitating life there for a moment. Surprisingly emotional scene.
I mean, was there anything that you guys did just to sort of, I don't know, get back into that headspace from 30 years ago? Any sort of little, I don't know, actor tricks, something where you're like, okay, I need to get back to this guy that I haven't even, you know, hasn't been in my life in all this time?
I don't know. I mean, for me, I had a lot of time as we were working on the final stages of financing, but it looked like we were going to start working on kind of the body of present day Bill, which I would have done anyway. But it wasn't like going back to the old movies and trying to replicate who we'd been. And it was really like based on the circumstances of this particular story, and who these guys would be at this age, and just finding the body and the voice for that. But no, I mean, otherwise it was, you know, to kind of Bill's point, you do all that prep work. At a certain point, you just kind of show up and get her done, you know?
Exactly. At a certain point, you just, you know, you lob the ball across the net and you start volleying. The only prep work that I did, aside from, you know, reading the script, the new script over and over. But I watched the first two films to like remind myself where we're coming from and where we had left off, you know. And you know, I was looking for gestures and things that I had, you know, little things that I had done, little character things that I had that would help me, just to refresh my memory.
Did watching those movies, did anything surprise you about watching those movies?
How young I was. That really surprised me.
At least you were an adult. I was like unrecognizable to myself. I didn't even know who that person. I was like, I don't even remember you. That version of you. Thinking to myself when I, you know, who is that? Was I ever really that young? Did I really? Okay, I'll take it.
It was fun. I kept remember as I was watching Bogus Journey. I kept remembering, like, the night that we were shooting in the hardware store, and there was just like little things that happened along the way. There was a guy who wouldn't turn off his motorcycle outside the hardware store, and the, you know, PAs and producers were going out and trying to get him to shut up, turn off your motorcycle, and he got pissed off and revved it up and did like a wheelie and flipped himself over. I was like, I don't know, just, you know, little crap.
Yeah.
That ball cap that I was wearing was this tight thing, and it's glued all the way around, and they had to keep like draining the sweat out of the back of it.
Well,
oh,
I mean,
the glamour.
Yeah. It was very glamorous. Yeah.
The movie is it's so entertaining. You guys did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Was there, but as you know, as you mentioned, this kind of has been in development for a long time. It's happening, it's not happening. We don't know if it's happening. Blah blah blah. It's been going back and forth. At any point during that period, was there some wariness about maybe revisiting these characters, especially Bill and Ted, because they're teenagers essentially in that first movie, and so it's like, well, how do we get them to, you know, how do we get them to be, you know, I guess middle-aged adults with families, and how do we get there?
No, I wouldn't say there was. In fact, sort of in the opposite, it was the idea that Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon brought originally to Keanu and myself was so rich with comic possibility, just at its root. This whole idea that you catch up with these guys all these years later with families and lives and responsibilities, and they haven't written the song, and they have to write the song. It felt playable. Like it wasn't like their idea was, you guys, you find us and we're like exactly like we left us, right?
Right.
That would have been daunting, and probably unplayable. But the idea they had was, in my opinion, was going to get funnier the older we got. The farther away we got from who we were back then, the funnier this idea would be. So I felt fine. I mean, it was frustrating how long it took to get off the ground, but it was never wariness. I think that we really believed in what they wrote. It was really written from a place of integrity, and it had a lot of comic invention. So we were very excited about getting it done, and that sort of fueled everybody along the journey, because it was a very long and arduous journey. And there were many points along the way, right up until right before we started shooting, where we thought the whole thing was going to go away. So,
yeah. And, you know, I thought, I thought it was actually kind of pretty poignant, you know, this kind of the idea of these, like, sort of, you see a band that's been famous and they're kind of past their peak, and we've all kind of seen that story, I guess, on Behind the Music. You're
Yes.
kind of doing one of those, but it was kind of I don't know, it was how did it feel to play that? I know, Alex, you have a lot of musician friends. I mean, that kind of, I mean, I imagine that kind of hits home for a lot of people, you know?
well, I think the idea of looking at your life and what you were expecting it to be and what it is just a function of being alive. I think that everyone can relate to that. the idea of clinging to some image or concept that you thought was supposed to be your destiny, even if it's not as grandiose as our ridiculous one is. I think it's very relatable. So I think it's really just a story about two men of a certain age looking at their lives, who are then, the comic engine, of course, is they're then told they have to fulfill their destiny. We're right at the moment where they're like,
Right.
come on, this is ludicrous. Let's give it
Yeah.
up.
At the moment when you should be giving up and saying, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, all right, we didn't write it.
Yeah. Enough. Yeah.
I have to ask, how did it feel to be doing a Bill and Ted movie without George Carlin? Because that's obviously, obviously this wasn't physically possible to do that. But he was a big part of that, and obviously a beloved guy in his own right,
Yeah, though, I mean, if you recall, and Bill's here was in Bogus, but he's in almost none of Bogus Journey, almost none of it. He's really, he shows kind of bookends at the end when it turns out that Pam Grier is actually George, which is mind-blowingly strange.
Mind-blowing.
We love George, and he's a huge presence in the world of Bill and Ted, and it was a lot, and we felt his presence throughout it, and a lot of thought was given to it by the writers. But but he's been gone a long time, and we've we miss him. So there was just the personal aspect of just wishing he was around to enjoy. He liked these movies, and it would have been.
I think
great.
he would have had a ball coming back and address. I think he would really have enjoyed addressing. You didn't. You haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
I think he would have delighted in that.
Yeah, agreed.
I was remembering. I gave him a cassette of songs that I had written that I performed at a coffee house in LA, and when we were on the set of Bogus Journey, and just years and years and years went by, and I hadn't seen him, and everybody's lives had moved on, and I moved back to New York, and I got a phone call one morning from George Carlin, and he said, "You remember that cassette of songs you gave me? I wore it out. I need you to send me another one." And it was like, by that time, no one was using cassettes, and by then it was CDs, and it may have just been a BS.
I don't think so.
An excuse to call, an excuse to touch base with somebody that he, after all these years.
Yeah.
But I sent him a CD, and he sent me books. He sent me all of his books inscribed, and that was the last I heard from him.
Yeah.
I think they're saying we got time for one more, so I have to ask this. I don't think I'm giving anything away because it's in the trailer.
Yeah.
How much fun was it doing the prison scene? Because the prison scene is just bananas.
Yeah, it was really.
You weren't
fun.
hot in those suits, were you?
No. They had built-in air conditioners, so they had
Are you serious?
thousands of tiny little fans that just cooled your body. No, it was like I was in an altered state of like heat fatigue. Yeah, It was the day that my family came to visit me from LA, and I'm
of
in
course.
this giant bodysuit, and I'm huge and tattooed and veils of sweat. I can't. It's New Orleans in the middle of summer. It was like 110 degrees, 100% humidity. I couldn't see an inch in front of me for all the sweat and just the heat. And I could just kind of make out my 10-year-old like behind the camera, just like looking utterly, completely stunned. Yeah,
it's an astonishing look. It's just it's an amazing look. But I know how long it must have taken to get to get that sequence. You must have been in those suits for hours and hours.
Yeah, it was really fun. I love working. I mean, makeup is hard and it's painful and it's challenging, but it's also really, really fun. And you can inhabit. I mean, Bill knows this is what he's doing with death, but you end up inhabiting a completely different person. It's the whole idea of a mask. You put on a mask, you become someone else immediately. So,
kind of freeing.
It's very liberating. Yeah. So all the stuff we were doing as alternate versions of ourselves was incredibly fun from an acting standpoint, all of it. But the prison was the most because it was the most extreme.
Yeah, I mean, I loved all the versions too, but that one was just like, like wow. I can't
I
believe
know, that's just jaw dropping. That's so
Great
good.
idea. Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. It's been fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. And great to see you, Bill.
Hey, nice to see you, Alex. I'll see you at the
I got-
premiere.
Yeah,
So,
I will see you on Zoom at the Zoom premiere. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Catch you later.